what exactly goes into being a gestational carrier? I get a lot of questions on this. How is the baby inserted into your uterus? How do you get pregnant with it? Is it your egg? Is it an egg donor? I get all kinds of questions. So the short and sweet answer is it's not my egg, and it's done through a catheter. And what that means is the embryo is already fertilized, so it's an embryo. So they're going to take the sperm from the egg donor or the father or whoever, and then they're going to take the egg from the egg donor or the mother, and they're going to fertilize it to create that embryo. And then once that embryo is created, they freeze them. And so with my situation, my intended mother has used her own egg, and she has a donor. So she has had frozen embryos for quite a little while. I believe that the process of thawing that embryo is going to start either the night before or the morning of the embryo transfer. And so an embryo transfer, when that happens, is they just put it into a tiny, tiny little catheter. It's very small. I think it's pretty much smaller than your finger. It's very small. And then they're going to insert that right in through your cervix into your uterus, and they're going to release that embryo into your lining. They put it into the lining, and then you hope and you pray and you do all the things to make sure that it sticks. So no, it's not your own egg. Now I know there are some situations where you can use your own eggs, but that is not typical in most surrogacy journeys. Another question that I get asked a lot about is abstinence. So most of us are, young-ish and in happy, committed relationships. And so we want to know what that looks like as far as intimacy with our partners. And so the short and sweet answer to that is there is actually a window where you do need to remain abstinent, and that's right before your embryo transfer. Now, it says in your documentation that you get from the clinic, and it also says in your legal contract that you remain abstinent for X amount of weeks. And I believe it's 4. I want to say it's 4. Don't quote me on that. If you have questions about that kind of thing, you can always reach out to the clinic or the agency. Somebody will have an answer for you. But yes, you are to remain abstinent for a determined amount of time. So that doesn't mean protected. It means completely abstinent, nothing, until you have completed your embryo transfer and you have a confirmed pregnancy, because the chances of you getting pregnant twice are very, 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 very unlikely. Not impossible. Nothing is impossible, but it is very unlikely that you will end up pregnant again after you are already confirmed pregnant. So you want to make sure that you are using protection for any window that they are saying that it's okay to engage in sexual activity, but you don't want to test any kind of luck and do that within a window that you're not permitted to do so. So you make sure that you discuss that with your partner, because that might be a big red flag for them. That might be a big hard pass. No, I'm not going to go 4 weeks without, being intimate with my partner. So that's something that you also need to take into consideration when you are considering being a surrogate. That is a question I get asked a lot, actually. And, like I said, there are determined times where you are to remain abstinent. And there are also guidelines as to what you are allowed to do after the embryo transfer, such as, like strenuous activity, working out, things of that nature. And the answer when it comes to, are you allowed to do your workouts? Are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to do that? Basically, if my OB says that I am permitted to do something such as working out, riding a bike, swimming, whatever the situation or the activity may be, if my OB is okay with it, 9 times out of 10, your intended parents are going to be okay with it too. There might be some situations where they're like, no, I don't want you to ride a bike when you're 26 weeks pregnant. And that's perfectly acceptable. You just have to make sure that you communicate with them and let them know if that's something that you're, willing to adhere to, or if it's something that you need to find a compromise on. Now, I wouldn't think that anything crazy like that would be something that would be brought into question, because that doesn't sound like it's super unreasonable. And for the most part, your requests from your IPs will not be unreasonable. But as long as your OB is on board with you doing whatever it is, most of the time your IPs will be too.